Pragosh Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept mine, Gopal Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
So nice to spend time with you. Thank you so much for your valuable time.
Prabhu, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your even more valuable time, I would say.
Oh, no, not really. So today is the Disappearance Day celebration of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And we, the GBC SPT, or Strategic Planning Team, decided that a nice way to celebrate this would be to have a series of discussions from senior devotees such as you, and to talk about Srila Prabhupada's position in the society as the preeminent Shiksha Guru for all members of ISKCON for all of time. Yesterday we had Malati Prabhu, who spoke with us.
She said, but can I interject real quick and just say, I've had the good fortune on many different occasions, mainly in the UK actually, but different places where Malati has spoken, whether it's on disappearance, appearance days, etc. And it's always for me, a real delight to hear her speak and give her personal realizations.
It was a delight, yes, it was a delight. We also said yesterday spent time with Harisari Prabhu, and we spent time with Badri Narayan Maharaj.
Okay.
Preceding our time, we just got done spending time with Vaishesheka Prabhu.
Wow.
After we're done, we'll then have some time with Radhanath Maharaj.
Okay.
And then tomorrow, at the same time slots of 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 7 a.m. Pacific time, which is the Los Angeles time zone, we'll spend time with Vishaka and Suraswara and Nishingananda Prabhu. So these 9 devotees, of which you're in this group, we're digging down into the meaning of what does it mean that Srila Prabhupada is the preeminent Shiksha Guru. Maybe we could just start off. You are a famous devotee. You're a GBC member, a member of the governing body commission. You've held that post in England and a number of Scandinavian countries like that in Europe for 20 years?
20, yeah, 20.
25 years?
20, no, about 20, yeah.
20. Just tell us a bit about yourself for those few devotees in our audience that might not know you so well.
Maybe the majority. The first thing I would say that I'm in stellar company from, Malati to Badri Narayan Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, etc. Yeah. So yeah, feeling very honoured to be in that stellar association. Well, I just to clarify also, I'm not a Prabhupada disciple. I joined in the early 80s in London, in Soho Street, after reading The Science of Self-Realization. But then I relocated back to Ireland to disconnect myself from the attachments that I had in London at that time, to give myself a clean break, so to speak, girlfriend, etc. And my early days were in the Irish Yatra, and I'm still actually based in Ireland, but then for different reasons, there's kind of a long history really, but different reasons got connected with different services and different initiatives in the UK and whatever. And then when Shivaram Maharaj wanted to move on from his role as GBC in the UK, I'd already been made a co-GBC actually for France. And then Shivaram Maharaj approached me and requested me to replace him. So trying to follow in his footsteps, not an easy task. And I agreed to do that. Then I had an interview with about 50 of the senior devotees in the same room, all at the same time, wanting to question me and asking me for my thoughts on ISKCON and ideas and vision and whatever for the UK Yatra. That was the toughest interview in my life, mainly because of the sheer numbers. But somehow or other I got through that, and then I've been serving as the GBC for about 20 years in the UK, and then when Ravinda Swarup Prabhu stepped down as a GBC a few years after that, they asked me to take responsibility for Scandinavia, which was a delight actually. Beautiful part of the world, lovely devotees, nice projects. So I've been there, and then also Switzerland actually as well. Yeah. I mean, in Ireland, I guess what I'm most known for was starting a Govinda restaurant. I was going to say chain. It's not really a chain. I think that's a little strong. But started a few Govinda restaurants in Dublin, Ireland. Actually, they're facing their biggest challenge ever now with this coronavirus, because currently we're locked down and they're not able to open. So that's certainly a challenge. Yeah, I think that's enough about myself. But on the subject of today, though, Gopal, right? I just want to say, in case I forget to mention this later, that it is interesting that because I'm not a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, my only association with Srila Prabhupada is a Vani association through his books, through his lectures, etc., through videos and all of that kind of thing. So it's only a Vani association. And I often say to devotees like myself who are not disciples of Srila Prabhupada that in many ways that's a big advantage, because we didn't have both. We never had the Vapu association to lament about losing. We've only had the Vani association. So anyway, it's just an interesting positive, if you like. I'm sure there's not one single second, third generation devotee who would not have liked the Vapu of Srila Prabhupada, absolutely. But the fact that we never had it, there's also kind of a positive to that as well.
And it is one of the reasons why we asked you to be a part of this, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it is a direct fact. We also asked you because I have some awareness that you have a lot of realizations about what it means. The topic, what does it mean to be the preeminent Shiksha Guru of ISKCON? I believe that you have some realizations about this, and we wanted you to share them. But the notion that you're a grand disciple is one of the reasons that we asked you to join, actually. So thank you for that. And so then let's just go with one particular question then. What's your first memory of Srila Prabhupada?
Okay, yeah, my first memory. Well, my first memory in one sense was actually reading in The Science of Self-Realization. I got that book. Actually, I didn't personally get that book. It was a friend of mine somehow or another got it, and I didn't know what it was. And I was in their apartment one day, and I was just flicking through it. And then they said, "Oh, you take that with you if you like." So I actually took it to my own apartment like that. At that particular period of time, I didn't read it immediately. But at that particular period of time in my life, as Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, the 4 different types of people that come to Krishna consciousness, and one of them is the distressed. So I had an experience that I guess probably 50% of men on the planet would have, and even a bigger, I should quickly add, probably a bigger percentage of women have had, and that is where your partner, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that they're unfaithful to you. So, that was my first experience of that, kind of getting the broken heart, if you like. And that was very distressing. And I remember sitting at home moping about that and lamenting about that and being very distressed or whatever about that. And I just picked up The Science of Self-Realization and started to read it. And the very first, not the very first, but after a little bit of reading, I read 2 sentences. One just said, Prabhupada, just matter of fact, you are not the body. And then the second thing, and you are not the mind. And when I read that point about not being the mind, that was super powerful for me, because I could immediately identify that's the cause of my current suffering. So then I decided to, because there was addresses in the back of the book and all that kind of thing, I decided to visit a Hare Krishna temple shortly after that. But in terms of my direct association with Prabhupada, if you like, that was when I went to a Sunday feast at Bhaktivedanta Manor in 1981, I think it was. And when I went there, they, like many centres, would show a video of Srila Prabhupada or some kind of Krishna conscious video before the main part of the programme. And if you're familiar with the manor, they have a little theatre room there that they do plays and dramas, but they also show videos in. So I went in, and thankfully I went to the back of the room, and what they were showing was your ever well-wisher. And like 10 or 15 minutes into that video, can't remember exactly, I literally tears started coming from my eyes, which is so unusual. I was like a teenage kind of macho kind of guy who, liked to think I was in control, whatever. So crying wasn't kind of part of my normal activity. So I'm crying watching this video because of what I just perceived to be the incredible compassion of this man to do what he did at such an advanced age and make all the sacrifices that he made. Probably I was ego projecting as well, thinking how I would never consider being so generous and compassionate and selfless like that. So I was just identifying something that I'd never experienced in my life before. Somebody showing such incredible compassion and selflessness like that. So yeah, that was my first association with Srila Prabhupada. But then of course I quickly realized that Prabhupada had already left.
Wonderful story. I don't know how to word this. So for you, who is Srila Prabhupada?
Well, I think my immediate answer to that question would be I don't know. I don't know who Srila Prabhupada. Other than for me, right from that very time in 1981, whatever it was, right up to today, he is the most extraordinary person that I have ever heard about or known about. And that's just right across the board, the most extraordinary person. Now, something really amazing is that during the 50th anniversary, because we're delving in more about ISKCON and its importance and significance, and you're studying more about Srila Prabhupada and his history, and more things tend to come to light all the time. So we came across this verse, which I think is a well-known verse now, and I've forgotten it, of course. Idam stanam parichaja videsham gamyate maya. And that's coming from the Padma Purana, and it's in a conversation between Narada Muni and Bhakti Devi. And Bhakti Devi is saying to Narada Muni, I will leave this place for Vrindavan, and I will travel to faraway lands to preach the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now that dates back minimum 5,200 years, but it could be many, many years before that. But it's a long time ago. But since that prediction of Bhakti Devi, we don't have any knowledge of anybody actually doing that. Yet, in 1965, where did Srila Prabhupada leave from? He left from Vrindavan. Where did he go? He went to faraway lands, because you cannot really get further away from India than America, and he went to America. So he went to faraway lands. And what was the one thing, aside from his clothes, aside from an umbrella, aside from some grain, and aside from, I think, $6 or whatever it was, what was it that Prabhupada brought to America with him? He brought Srimad Bhagavatams. So, for me, it's like, this is absolutely extraordinary. We have people in the material world. You take people I don't know, pick someone from the air, maybe someone like maybe Nelson Mandela, people like that. Great souls, did great things, selfless things also. But nothing on the scale that Srila Prabhupada did. But none of them would have had these shastric predictions about what they were going to do. And for me, when you consider what Prabhupada did, and when you take references like that predate us thousands and thousands of years, and they fit so perfectly into what Srila Prabhupada then did, then for me, the answer is I don't know who Srila Prabhupada is, but he's the most extraordinary person that I have ever known of.
Beautiful. Thank you for that answer. What about ISKCON? He created ISKCON. What's that all about? Why did he establish ISKCON as an entity, etc.?
Right. Well, this is, why he created ISKCON was because he was convinced that the best way to spread Krishna consciousness was to do it in a structured and organized way. That by the way, Gopal Prabhu, there's arguably nobody in our movement who's more in tune with, strategic planning, organizations, how they work, how to make them effective than your good self. So I'm sure that
I thought you were going to say you.
so you'll very much kind of connect with this. So Prabhupada, very clearly, right from day one, he was identifying that was the best way to spread the Hare Krishna movement, the Sankirtan movement. Now, what's really interesting to me, again, we've talked about, well, we didn't really get into the detail of his sacrifices, but his health issues on the 6-week journey, coming to America in September. In a few months, it was winter. In Lilamrita, we read with the wind chill factor in New York City when Prabhupada's walking to the store to buy some boga, the temperature's -30. Srila Prabhupada, he's coming from India. So all these incredible sacrifices that he performed. But another amazing sacrifice to me, as a director of some ISKCON entities around the world, is that within 9 months of arriving in America, in a country he'd never been outside India, so he'd never been to America before. Also, America is not part of the Commonwealth, so the legal system and different things, that they would be quite different than India. Yet within 9 months of arriving in America, Srila Prabhupada had established a legal entity and all that entails. That's really, really significant. Why? Here's a saintly sadhu, 70 years of age. He's sitting in Tompkins Square Park chanting the Maha Mantra, and obviously that's what he's trying to do, get people attracted to chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Why is he establishing a legal entity within 9 months of arriving in America? Because of his clear understanding that in order for this to last, and it's all about legacy, isn't it? Srila Prabhupada, if he had departed in 1977, if ISKCON just dissolved a few months after he left, or the preaching mission had just dissolved, then I'm sure Prabhupada would think, well, what was the point of me making all these sacrifices? So the whole idea is that ISKCON has longevity. And one of the ways that it has longevity is by creating a structure and an organization around it and building on that. And that is my conclusion as to why Srila Prabhupada established ISKCON. But whatever the reasons, and there may be many more reasons like that, whatever the reason, he did it. And therefore, for you and for me and for all the devotees that have joined this movement, it surely should be one of our biggest priorities to make sure that we maintain, sustain, and ultimately grow and expand the organization that he started.
So when we look at him as the preeminent Shiksha Guru, and that implies his instructions are very important. I guess what I hear you saying, in other words, is one of his first instructions by way of his actions were to establish an organization. And therefore, we need to serve that organization. I love that. That's great. So when we talk about, well, what are we to do with this idea? He is the preeminent Shiksha Guru. What are we to do? That's then one of the things we have to do. We have to follow in that footstep, serve the organization, yeah? So tell us more about that.
Okay, and this is Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day. Of course, again, as I said at the very beginning, Srila Prabhupada hasn't disappeared. He's left this material world like that, but he hasn't disappeared. Prabhupada, of course, is still with us like that. So in that sense, it's just another opportunity to glorify him. But still, because it is an auspicious day, a very auspicious day, I want to. I don't want to say something that's controversial as such, but I don't think this is controversial. I think it's just important, even if there is an element of controversy to it. But establishing, we've done that as the GBC. We've passed resolutions, etc., and we've made this statement that you've made a few times now, that Srila Prabhupada is the preeminent Shiksha Guru. But making statements and putting something in writing is only 10%, 20% of the work. The other 80 or 90% of the work is actually acting on that platform, and not just you and me, who for whatever reason may have a strong conviction that is the reality, but what about those devotees who don't have that strong conviction? This is a big challenge, and it really is. I'm not a Prabhupada disciple, you are, and whatever, so many others that are, But we're not going to be here forever. I'm not a Prabhupada disciple. I'm 59 years of age, so I already feel old and whatever. So the devotees who are 10 years older than me, the Prabhupada disciples, they're not going to be with us for that much longer. I think it's safe to say that maybe in 30, certainly 40 years, that really none of the Prabhupada disciples will be with us. So really, one of the most important services that I see is establishing that, not just in writing and not just as a theoretical principle, but that it actually sinks into the hearts of every single devotee that's connected to this Hare Krishna movement. And then the controversial thing is that I don't think that's the case yet. In fact, I would say that we're substantially a significant away from achieving that. One of the reasons, and you could argue, that until we at least reach the beginning stages of being pure devotees and the principles of ahoitaki apratihata, that we have no motivation, etc., is that we tend to insert ourselves. We tend to insert ourselves into situations looking for recognition, looking for prominence, looking for appreciation, whatever it may be. And to the degree that we do that, in my humble opinion, to that same degree, we're making it more difficult to establish Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Shiksha Guru in the lives of every single devotee in this movement. And then in terms of specifics, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is the role of Guru in our movement. Because it's natural that devotees, second generation, third generation devotees, it's natural that they will have deep appreciation, respect, love, and all of those things for their Diksha Guru, for any of their gurus, but as it happens, particularly for their Diksha Guru, that's the way it seems to be in our movement. So that in one sense is natural, but at the same time, they have to also understand that Srila Prabhupada, we say preeminent Shiksha Guru. To some degree now, as I'm speaking, I'm thinking those words are not strong enough. Srila Prabhupada is just not another Shiksha Guru. We have many, many Shiksha Gurus, or we can have many, many Shiksha Gurus. It's not that Srila Prabhupada is just one on a conveyor belt. Absolutely not. And the best analogy I think I can give is that in a beautiful, and you like astronomy, you have a wonderful telescope. I've seen some of your incredible pictures on your computer. So if we look at the sky on a clear night, a full moon clear night, you'll see the moon and you'll see billions of stars as well. And of course, ironically enough, when you have a full moon, it tends to obscure some of the stars because of the brightness of the moon. And I think we have to see it like that Srila Prabhupada is not just any old Shiksha Guru. Srila Prabhupada is the moon, the full moon. And all the other Shiksha Gurus and Diksha Gurus, they are one of these little stars that are around that moon. And we really have to, it just has to be, that has to be realized, realized by every single devotee in this movement. Personally, I have a big fear that if that realization doesn't take place, a little bit like we're in this coronavirus situation, they talk about a vaccine and they say in order for the vaccine to be really significant, then it has to be 60-70% effective, like that. So we have to get to a point where we, ideally everybody in the movement, but certainly by far and away the majority of devotees in our movement who have that understanding and that realization. Otherwise, I genuinely fear for the future of ISKCON after all the Srila Prabhupada disciples have left.
And just to put another question to you on this fear, and we've talked about this in GBC meetings. Right now we have approximately 135 initiating spiritual masters. Most of them are Srila Prabhupada's disciples. And as you say, our time is limited. Our time meaning the direct disciples. If we go forward one full generation, we would have 3,000 initiating spiritual masters if we keep the same percentages. I mean, there's roughly 1.5% of Srila Prabhupada's disciples have accepted that service. If we have 1.5% of the grand disciples accept that service, we have 3,000 people running around as gurus. Does that not significantly compound the issue that you just brought up, and then what to do about that.
It does compound it, significantly compound it. And, you know, we face a real challenge here because on the one hand, Srila Prabhupada said, we want hundreds and thousands of spiritual masters because by definition, we need those in order to expand the Hare Krishna movement. Currently, we have, did you say 100? I thought it was around 90 that we have, 90.
No, it's about 135.
Is it really? Okay, we won't fall out over it.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Let's say it's 100 actually, because it's a round number and it's easy to divide. So let's say we have 100. And on our official literature on the 50th anniversary of ISKCON, we said that we have 10 million people who identify as Hare Krishnas. Like, in other words, directly connected to our movement like that, 10 million. So if you divide 100 into 10 million, what do we get there? What do we get?
0.001.
Sorry, the other way. No, I'm trying to figure out if we have 100 gurus and we have 10 million people who need initiation or have initiation, how many, on average, how many disciples is each guru going to have? They're going to have like 100,000?
10,000.
10,000, okay. So that's 10,000 each of those gurus. So obviously we need more gurus to facilitate the people who want to advance in Krishna consciousness, and we want to expand the movement, so we need more and more gurus. Yeah,
10,000 might be the wrong answer, by the way.
Pardon?
10,000 might be the wrong answer.
Yeah, maybe it's 100.
It
could be. It's a large number. Yeah. That's the point.
Yeah.
And actually, in our movement right now, I think there's only one spiritual master who has more than 10,000 disciples. So, you know, it's not the norm for the. How can a guru, in that sense, cater for so many? But anyway, that's a detail. So we need more spiritual masters to cater for the people who want to take the Krishna consciousness and also to expand the movement. So in one sense, that's fine. Let's have as many as possible. But we cannot have, and this is the problem, we cannot have gurus taking such a significant role that they become the be-all and end-all in the lives of devotees. I just don't. If you read Srila Prabhupada, particularly when this subject came up in 1977, and devotees were kind of asking these questions about what happens when you leave Prabhupada, who will initiate, who will the gurus be, Prabhupada was so nonchalant about it. It was quite incredible. You just read that conversation, you know, Prabhupada said, oh, so-and-so can do Africa, so-and-so can do it in India, you know, and then at the end of the conversation that kind of finished, and someone says, oh, Prabhupada, we forgot about South America. And Prabhupada says, oh, who's down there? Ridananda can do that, you know. Prabhupada is just so casual about it. In other words, it's a service. It's a service to help the mission. The mission is the important thing. And who is head of our mission? The head of our mission is Srila Prabhupada. And therefore, if we can somehow or another understand that basic point, guru is not some mystical person. None of these people would be gurus. You wouldn't be a guru. I wouldn't be a guru. And none of the devotees in our movement would be gurus without Srila Prabhupada. That's the core thing. Without Prabhupada, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be practicing Krishna consciousness. So devotees, disciples should not see their individual gurus as, and Prabhupada preached against it, this idea, the electric shock guru. Oh, I've met my guru. Oh, my guru's so wonderful. I've met him. Oh, he's given me this incredible. This isn't our movement. This has nothing to do with what we're about. We're about service and spreading the mission of Krishna consciousness. We're not to get hung up and lost in these kind of details. And I think as long as we can do that, understand that service to the mission is the key thing, and Srila Prabhupada is the head of our mission, that's at least a starting point.
Wow. So you, I think, have identified what could be the single most important issue, challenge going out into the future here.
Yeah.
I'm almost dumbfounded by the presentation that you have. And I think we need to try to understand more of this need to link with Srila Prabhupada so that every single person understands essentially what you just said. How are we going to proliferate this understanding?
Well, that's more your field of expertise in terms of strategy and how to actually implement these things. Mine are just thoughts, if you like. But I just thought of something as you spoke in response to what I last spoke, which I think is significant. Because I think some people would get offended by what I just said, that we shouldn't see the guru as the be-all and end-all, etc., and the real thing is service to the mission. You know, some people would probably, some people might object to that. But here's an interesting thing. Historically, in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, going back as long as you want to go back, historically, the guru was the head of their own organization and the head of their own math, as we all know.
Oh.
So my point about, not overemphasizing the role of guru in the Hare Krishna movement was actually institutionalized by Srila Prabhupada himself. Because for the very first time in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, as far as we're aware, for the very first time, Srila Prabhupada said, that's not going to happen anymore. That may be the historical reality for thousands of years. I'm changing it. And one of the reasons he changed it was because of the understanding that if you put one person in charge of something and then they run into difficulty from a spiritual point of view, the whole thing collapses, falls away. Whereas if you have the protection of a group of devotees being in charge, it's very unlikely that they're all going to deviate or fall down or get into trouble at the same time. It's very, very unlikely. So what did Srila Prabhupada do? He said, no, the gurus are not going to be head of the tree. They're not going to be on top. That is not happening in ISKCON. What's happening in ISKCON is we're having a governing board, and everybody is answerable to that governing board, and that governing board is the final authority in my movement. And ironically enough, as you well know, that's the first clause in Srila Prabhupada's will. It's not like a footnote or second, third, fourth down the list. It's the very first clause in his will. That was the level of importance that Srila Prabhupada attached to it. But by doing that and establishing that governing board as the ultimate authority in his movement, it also, at least indirectly, indicates the slight dilution of the role of guru. Because if Prabhupada was fixated with the guru being the topmost person in the organization, he wouldn't have done that. But he did do that. And I think devotees really have to meditate on, why did Srila Prabhupada do that? Why did he change a system that had been in place for thousands of years and put a governing board in charge or as the ultimate authority even of the gurus?
And historically, he sat in the GBC meetings and as a member voted like everybody else to show us this example. He actually voted like everybody else. This is profound. I don't know broadly how many devotees have really focused in on this aspect, but when we talk about Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya, he is our preeminent Shiksha Guru. The instruction that we have to have a structure, the instruction that the GBC is the head of this organization, and that to follow in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps, sure, many things we have to follow, the 4 rules and regulations, we have to chant our rounds, we have to read. There's a lot of emphasis in our discussions about reading from Srila Prabhupada's books and understanding them, etc., etc. But from a structural point of view, you're basically saying we've got to work on the structure and make sure that that's solid. And we have to recognize that the GBC is our ultimate managing authority of our movement. How is that going to really work? Will that, what do we have to do? What are some of the things that we have to do in our service to Srila Prabhupada that basically means we need to serve ISKCON also?
Well, a couple of things immediately come to mind. Again, like I said earlier, I really don't want to be controversial. I mean, all of these devotees.
You might as well. You've already been a bit, so why not?
And I know many of these devotees so well. And on a personal level, you have great relationships, and there's no problem. But in terms of organization and structure and all of that kind of thing, I think we do have to be a little bold and discuss these things threadbare and try to figure out what to do. So a couple of things that immediately come to mind. Personally, I think that there almost should be a traveling roadshow of, and there should be a nice presentation that we could put together collectively as a group, whoever they may be, strategic planning team, etc. And you could put together a presentation about the importance. By the way, I should mention now His Holiness Bhakti Trumarj, because all the devotees that I can think of that obviously were gurus, he was so strong on this point, and of course we've lost him now, which is a real shame.
It is greatly missing him, because he was the strongest proponent of Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent guru, and ISKCON had to be served.
Yeah, he really was. So what I was going to say was a kind of you put together a presentation emphasizing this point about Prabhupada's role. Like I say, just off the top of my head now, I'm thinking preeminent Shiksha Guru is not strong enough, actually. It's actually not strong enough of a term, because Shiksha Guru refers to so many different people. But anyway, you put together a presentation, and that becomes a traveling roadshow. And I would even argue that in theory, you could actually attend, not you personally, but a group, we could have many devotees involved in this, but they could attend every single initiation ceremony in ISKCON, and that's presented on a screen or whatever at every initiation ceremony in ISKCON prior to these devotees taking initiation from whoever the guru is that they're taking initiation from. That's one thought. Another thought is that I don't think personally that any of our devotees, not just gurus, although often it is gurus, but not just gurus, I don't think that there should be any sort of quote-unquote autobiographical type books on the lives of devotees in our movement currently. I don't think there should be any of those. Prabhupada didn't do any of those. Prabhupada never did an autobiographical book about his life. His books were all on philosophy, on Krishna's pastimes, etc., and philosophy, whatever. And after Prabhupada left, of course, that's a different thing. We had the Lilamrita that was officially commissioned, and subsequently other devotees have written books. Hari Sori Prabhu, beautiful book, Prabhupada's The Transcendental Diary, and many other devotees have done that too. But also there's a lot of books about individual devotees in our movement and how they joined, and what they were doing beforehand and what they've done now, etc., etc. And I personally don't see why that really should happen, because I just think it actually deflects away from Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm. So, implied in some of what you said, and even directly, training is a big thing. And if we look at other organizations in their inception, and then in their subsequent start to grow, and then they get to an interim step, which is similar to the step that ISKCON is at now, they put so much effort into training, so much into education. It would seem like that's a key point for our future. We have to devote more energy to this training business.
Absolutely. And just a quick comment on that, Gopal, is that, what was it, 100 years after Lord Chaitanya left, thereabouts? I can't remember exactly. But basically, the movement, if you like, that he started was finished. It had been taken over. The Sahajas had taken it over, and effectively it was gone. It was finished. So if Lord Chaitanya, everything that he left behind and the initiative that he started, and he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, if within 100 years of him departing, it can all be lost, really, for us to think that somehow or another, without proactive measures to ensure the legacy of Srila Prabhupada and to ensure the legacy of ISKCON, without those proactive measures, if we think that it's just automatically going to happen, I think that's delusional.
And then even in recent times, even though within the Gaudiya Math and the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples, they have some active preaching going on and something is going on, but that entity, the Gaudiya Math as an entity, basically dissolved within years of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance. So we have something that's even very recent and was part of what Prabhupada did, why he did, how he did, was to try to establish that vision that Bhaktisiddhanta had.
And, to build on your point, if Prabhupada hadn't have done that, established the organization ISKCON and put in a governing board, you could be sure that ISKCON would have gone in the very same way. So again, that point about building on what Prabhupada gave us, and again, actually, it's one of the glories of the GBC that whatever it is now, 40 whatever years since Srila Prabhupada left, that the movement is still, cohesive and effectively still one entity. Obviously we have our challenges and tensions and here and there, but in essence it's still one homogeneous entity like that. So in that sense, that's the glory of the GBC, that they have been able to keep that together. But my point is, we cannot take that for granted, and I think that we are, in the next sort of couple of decades, certainly we are entering into a new phase where we will have no direct Prabhupada disciples physically with us. And I think that the best that those Prabhupada disciples can do before they all depart is to ensure that add a little bit more cement or a little bit more glue or a little bit more whatever it is to the mix to ensure that ISKCON doesn't disintegrate after they have all left.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our time. And the way this conversation has evolved, we have Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Shiksha Guru, founder Acharya of our movement, and we have to recognize some potential, depending on whose opinion is whose, that ISKCON could, in fact, dissolve into something much less than what Srila Prabhupada would want. That's part of what your message is it not?
Oh, absolutely. We have to be conscious. We're meant to be Krishna conscious, and first we have to be conscious of the threats, conscious of Maya's power. Prabhupada was asked that question. You seem to have conquered Maya, and Prabhupada said to his disciples, the only reason that you think I've conquered Maya is that I have a healthy respect for her, whereas you don't. So we have to be aware of all of those dynamics. Yeah, absolutely.
So you and I have been talking almost as if we're in our little bubble. But in fact, we have hundreds of people that are watching us now, and we're going to have thousands of people that are going to be listening to you. Over the course of the next 3-4 weeks, thousands of people will watch this. I'd like you to address them as it relates to this topic, that holding ISKCON together is not 100% given here. It requires each and every disciple to be responsible to ISKCON. Please address our audience on this fact.
Well, okay, thank you, Gopal Prabhu. So the first thing I would say, that Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of ISKCON, and the only comparable thing we have to that really is the 4 Sampradayas. And those Sampradayas are ancient. They go back so far like that. Of course, things get added to them. So it was Brahma's Sampradaya that we're in, and then it was the Brahma Madhvacharya's role, and then Gaudiya, Lord Chaitanya's role. So they get added to. But essentially, there are only 4 Sampradayas. And actually, I think it's inevitable that in a relatively short period of time, we're going to either have Prabhupada's name added to that or ISKCON's name added to that. So the significance, none of us will ever do that or ever be eligible for that, but Srila Prabhupada is, because of the significance of what he did. But my message to the devotees listening would be, Srila Prabhupada gave an address in Los Angeles on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's disappearance day. And it's an extraordinary address to the devotees, because these are all relatively new devotees and sort of learning all the time. And Srila Prabhupada's essential message was, who thought that I would meet my Guru Maharaj? Who thought when I'd meet him that he would tell me to go and preach Krishna consciousness in the English language? Who thought that I would come to America? Who thought that I would meet all of you? Who thought that this movement would start to take hold and grow and expand? Who thought that all these books would be translated into English, etc.? So he goes through this whole sequence of things that who could have thought of this? But then he finishes by saying, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact quote, I'm just paraphrasing, but he finishes by saying essentially, as long as you follow the order of your spiritual master, just as I have tried to always follow the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, then unlimited things can happen, and you can achieve anything as long as you follow the order of your spiritual master. Now, my message would be, what is Srila Prabhupada's order? What is his order? His order is that we all work cooperatively together to ensure that his movement stays together. And as I mentioned earlier, the first item in his will is that the GBC is the ultimate managing authority of his movement. So my message would be, if we really want to follow Srila Prabhupada, if we really want to make him proud of our service and of his ISKCON going forward, that the best thing we can do is work cooperatively under the authority of the governing board that Srila Prabhupada empowered. I think that is the most effective way and most likely way that ISKCON will be protected from, and Prabhupada said himself, ISKCON won't be affected by outside forces. It will only be internal disputes and internal difficulties that will threaten ISKCON. However, if we all work together in that cooperative mood under the governing board that Srila Prabhupada put in place, I think that will ensure ISKCON's legacy.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your wisdom, and your enthusiasm, and the clarity of the concerns that we have.
Thank you so
much.
We'll
end our time together. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada.